There is a football sitting in a case in Buffalo, New York, and nobody is allowed to touch it. It belongs to a man who has been paid more money than almost anyone who has ever played the game, a man who has broken records that legends never came close to, and yet, every single year, when the calendar turns to January, that same man walks off a football field with his head down and no ring on his finger. Tonight, we are going to find out why. And we are going to find out if this is finally the year that changes. Because right now, in the summer of 2026, there is a quiet war going on across the National Football League. It is not being fought with trades or free agency contracts, even though there have been plenty of those. It is being fought over one single question, the same question that gets asked every single year and somehow never gets a final answer. Who is the best quarterback alive today? And this year, that question has more real answers than it has ever had before. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford. 5 men, 5 very different stories, all standing at the top of a mountain, all looking at each other, waiting to see who takes the next step. But before we get to the mountaintop, we need to start somewhere much smaller. We need to start with 2 franchises whose fan bases have spent decades either soaring with hope or drowning in heartbreak, sometimes both in the same season. One of them plays under bright lights in the biggest media market pressure cooker in professional sports. The other plays in the snow, in a small city in western New York, where the fans paint their chests in freezing temperatures and the whole town shuts down when their team plays. Dallas and Buffalo. Let's go there first. Picture Buffalo in late January. The wind is coming off Lake Erie so hard it feels like it is trying to peel the skin off your face. Snow is piled up in banks taller than a car. And inside Highmark Stadium, 60,000 people are screaming so loud that opposing quarterbacks have to use a silent count just to be heard by their own teammates. This is Bills Mafia. These are people who have watched their team lose 4 straight AFC championship games. 4. Some of those losses were gut punches nobody in sports history has ever really recovered from. A missed field goal here. A defensive stop that never came there. And through every single one of those losses, standing in the middle of the huddle, refusing to blink, has been one man. Josh Allen. To understand Josh Allen, you actually have to go back further than Buffalo. You have to go back to a small town in California. A kid who grew up on a farm, driving tractors before he could drive a car, throwing footballs into hay bales because there was nothing else to throw them at. He wasn't a 5-star recruit. He wasn't even a 3-star recruit for most of high school. Division I programs barely looked at him. He ended up at a junior college first, not because he lacked talent, but because almost nobody outside of his own small circle believed in what that talent could become. From there he went to Wyoming, a program that most casual football fans couldn't find on a map, and it was there, throwing footballs through brutal mountain winds in front of tiny crowds, that NFL scouts started to notice something. A cannon for an arm, a body like a tight end, and a competitiveness that bordered on stubborn refusal to lose. Buffalo drafted him 7th overall in 2018, and for the first 2 years, it looked like the doubters might have been right. His accuracy was shaky. His decision-making was worse. There were games where he looked like the most talented quarterback in the building and other games where he looked completely lost. But here is the thing about Josh Allen that separates him from almost every other quarterback of his generation. He never stopped working, and he never let a bad game turn into a bad month. Somewhere around his 3rd season, something clicked. The accuracy improved. The reads got faster. And the raw physical gifts that scouts drooled over in college finally had a brain attached to them that could use them properly. By 2024, Josh Allen wasn't just good. He was the most valuable player in the entire National Football League. He threw for well over 3,000 yards, ran for more than 500 more, and produced over 40 total touchdowns for the 5th season in a row, something no player in the history of the league had ever done. Think about that for a second. Not Tom Brady. Not Peyton Manning. Not Aaron Rodgers at his absolute peak. Josh Allen did something none of them ever did. And the Bills organization, recognizing exactly what they had, made sure he was never going anywhere else. They signed him to a 6-year deal worth $330 million, with $250 million of that fully guaranteed. At the time, the largest guarantee any player in NFL history had ever received. That contract runs all the way through the 2030 season. Buffalo made its bet, and the bet was simple. Josh Allen is the foundation. Everything else gets built around him. And yet, for all of that, Josh Allen still walks into locker rooms every single year carrying something heavier than any of his records. The missing piece. The one thing that has slipped through his fingers again and again. A trip to the Super Bowl. He has never been. Not once. He has come agonizingly close, standing on the doorstep of the AFC Championship year after year, only to watch that door slam shut, usually with a familiar face standing on the other side of it. That familiar face belongs to Kansas City. To Patrick Mahomes. If Josh Allen is the farm kid who clawed his way up from nothing, Patrick Mahomes is almost the opposite story. Baseball royalty in his blood, a natural gift for football so obvious that Kansas City traded significant draft capital just to move up and get him in 2017. And from almost the moment he took over as a starter, Mahomes didn't just win games. He redefined what the position could look like. Sidearm throws across his body. No-look passes that shouldn't work but somehow do. A joy for the game that made even his most ridiculous plays look effortless. 3 Super Bowl titles. Multiple MVP awards. A resume, at just 30 years old, that already places him in conversations with the greatest to ever throw a football. But something happened in 2025 that nobody saw coming. For the first time in his career, Mahomes looked human. The turnovers piled up. The offense sputtered. And then, in the middle of a difficult season, disaster struck. He tore his ACL and LCL in his left knee, an injury that ends most players' seasons and makes everyone around the league nervously ask the same question. Will he come back the same? Kansas City has built a dynasty on the idea that Mahomes is different, that normal rules of decline don't apply to him. Now, heading into 2026, that theory is about to be tested in the most real way possible. He says he wants to be ready for Week 1. The entire league is watching to see if his body agrees with him. So here is where the debate exploded this off-season. When the votes came in this summer, from coaches, from scouts, from front office executives around the entire league, people whose job it literally is to evaluate quarterback talent for a living, something remarkable happened. Josh Allen finished ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Not by a landslide, but clearly. More than 70 executives, coaches, and scouts sent in their rankings, and when the numbers were tallied, Allen came out on top, narrowly ahead of the 3-time Super Bowl champion. For years, if you asked anyone in football who the best quarterback alive was, the answer was almost automatically Mahomes. Now, for the first time, that answer has genuinely changed for a large chunk of the football world. Why? Part of it is simply what Mahomes has gone through, the injury, the down year that came before it. But a huge part of it is what Josh Allen has quietly fixed about his own game. Early in his career, Allen was must-see television because of how spectacular his highlights were, but he was also must-avoid television if you were a Bills fan who didn't want to see a back-breaking interception at the worst possible time. He used to throw somewhere around 15 interceptions a season during a rough stretch from 2021 through 2023. Since 2024, that number has been cut nearly in half. His fumbles have dropped too. The chaos that used to define his game has been replaced by control, without losing a single ounce of the physical brilliance that made him special in the first place. He has become, in the eyes of people who study this stuff professionally, the total package. A cannon arm. Legs that make him the most dangerous running quarterback in modern NFL history, with more rushing touchdowns than any quarterback who has ever played the position. And now, finally, the discipline to go with it. The Associated Press ran their own preseason poll this summer, asking football writers to rank their top 5 quarterbacks. Josh Allen appeared on every single ballot. He received first-place votes on nearly all of them. Patrick Mahomes finished second. Behind them came Matthew Stafford, the 38-year-old who somehow, deep into his late 30s, just won the first Most Valuable Player award of his entire career with the Los Angeles Rams, leading the league in passing grade and proving that experience and precision can still outduel younger, flashier arms. Then came Lamar Jackson, the most electrifying running quarterback the league has ever produced, a 2-time MVP himself, who has quietly put together a career passer rating that stacks up with anyone who has ever played, but who still, somehow, has never made it to a Super Bowl. And rounding out the group, Joe Burrow, a quarterback so talented and so composed under pressure that the only thing that has ever truly stopped him has been his own body breaking down at the worst possible times. Think about what that group represents. 5 men. 5 franchises. 5 fan bases that all believe, deep down, that their guy is the best one standing. And for the first time in years, there isn't one obvious answer. It's not Mahomes and then a gap. It's 5 players separated by inches, not miles, and the difference between them might come down to a single fourth-quarter drive in January. Now let's step outside that top tier for a moment, because right behind those 5 names, a new generation is pushing the door open, and pushing it open fast. Jordan Love in Green Bay, coming off one of the most efficient seasons any quarterback produced last year. Justin Herbert in Los Angeles, a quarterback with one of the purest arms in football, whose numbers have been held back mostly by an offensive line that hasn't kept him healthy or protected. And then there are the truly young ones, the names that fans are only now starting to fully appreciate. Drake May in New England, still in just his second full season as a starter, already being talked about by some respected analysts as a quarterback who deserves to be mentioned ahead of established stars because of how quickly he processes the field. Jaden Daniels in Washington, who exploded onto the scene as a rookie and has continued to look like a franchise cornerstone. Caleb Williams in Chicago, still hunting for his breakout year but overflowing with the kind of arm talent that makes scouts stop what they're doing and rewind the tape. And Jackson Dart, a rookie stepping in for the New York Giants, already generating buzz before he has even played a full professional season. This is the era we are living in right now. Not one dominant quarterback standing alone at the top while everyone else fights for scraps below him. A crowded, brutal, fascinating mountaintop with multiple men standing on it at once, and a wave of hungry 20-somethings climbing up from beneath them with every single game. Now, let's go back to Buffalo, because there is one more piece of this story that matters. The Bills didn't just extend Josh Allen this offseason and call it a day. They tore down a big part of their coaching staff too. Sean McDermott, the head coach who had been there for years, who had led the team through all 4 of those painful AFC championship losses, is gone. In his place, the Bills promoted their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, the architect who had helped mold Allen's offense into one of the most explosive in football. It is a massive gamble. New voice, new system, new pressure, all wrapped around the most important player in franchise history. Buffalo also cleared out a chunk of its aging defensive veterans, betting on younger, cheaper talent to fill the gaps. The goal isn't just to make the playoffs anymore. Buffalo has made the playoffs for years running. The goal is one specific thing: get over the hump. Win the game in January that has broken this franchise's heart over and over again. And heading into 2026, one respected analyst put it about as plainly as it can be put. Josh Allen is the best quarterback in football, and if the Bills end up as the number 1 seed in the AFC, which is well within the range of possibility, it will be because Allen delivered an MVP-caliber performance to get them there. That is the burden he carries into this season. Not just to be great. To be great enough, finally, to finish the job. Now let's leave the snow behind and travel south, into the heart of Texas, to a franchise that lives under a different kind of pressure entirely. Not the pressure of playoff heartbreak specifically, but the pressure of being, by most measures, the most valuable and most scrutinized sports franchise on the entire planet. The Dallas Cowboys. If you know anything about the Cowboys, you know the name Jerry Jones. He bought this team back in 1989 for what, at the time, seemed like an enormous and slightly insane amount of money. He fired a legendary coach almost immediately and installed his own guy. And over the following decades, he built the Cowboys into a business empire unlike anything else in sports, a franchise valued in the billions, filling a stadium so massive and so extravagant it has its own nickname, Jerry World. But here is the strange part of the story. For all that business success, for all those billions of dollars, the Cowboys have not been back to a Super Bowl since the 1995 season. 3 decades of America's team branding, 3 decades of massive expectations every single summer, and 3 decades without getting back to the very top of the mountain. 2025 was a rough one. The Cowboys finished 7 wins, 9 losses, and a tie, a record that satisfies absolutely nobody in a fan base this large and this demanding. And when a season like that ends in Dallas, changes are almost guaranteed to come. Sure enough, this offseason, the Cowboys made a significant move on the defensive side of the ball. Their defensive coordinator was let go after his unit finished dead last in the entire league in points allowed and pass defense during the 2025 season. In his place, Dallas hired Christian Parker, a rising name who had been working as a pass game coordinator in Philadelphia, one of the more successful defensive staffs in the league. It's a bet that fresh scheming and fresh energy can fix a defense that was, by almost every measurement, the worst in professional football last season. On offense, the story is more familiar. Dak Prescott returns as the starting quarterback, a player who has become one of the highest-paid quarterbacks in the entire league, sitting near the very top of the pay scale at around $60 million a year in average value, which for a while actually made him the single highest-paid quarterback in NFL history. Prescott has always been an interesting figure in these quarterback conversations. Statistically productive, generally durable when healthy, and yet, for whatever reason, he rarely gets mentioned in the same breath as Allen, Mahomes, Jackson, and Burrow when people debate the very best of the best. Some of that is about postseason results. Some of it is simply about the noise that surrounds every single thing that happens in Dallas, where every practice, every press conference, and every offseason rumor gets magnified louder than it would be almost anywhere else in the league. Heading into 2026, the Cowboys made sure to keep most of their offensive weapons in place. They used the franchise tag to retain wide receiver George Pickens, pairing him with CeeDee Lamb to form what should be one of the more dangerous receiver duos anywhere in football. They drafted a highly regarded defensive prospect early in the draft, someone many analysts considered one of the best overall players available that year, trading up to make sure he didn't slip away from them. And true to form for a Jerry Jones offseason, there was plenty of talk about spending big, about writing what Jones himself has called an embarrassing check to chase another championship. But when the dust settled on free agency, as has become something of a pattern with this franchise since as far back as 2013, the Cowboys mostly stood pat, adding a collection of useful but unspectacular veteran pieces rather than making the kind of headline-grabbing splash their fans have been begging for. So what does 2026 look like for Dallas? A brand new defensive coordinator trying to fix the worst unit in football. A quarterback with one of the biggest contracts in the sport still trying to prove he belongs in that very top tier of the position. A receiver room that should be dangerous if it stays healthy. And a fan base that has learned, through decades of nearly getting there and falling short, to hope carefully and brace for disappointment at the same time. Now here's where these two stories, Buffalo and Dallas, actually connect, because they represent two very different paths to the same goal. Buffalo has its guy. There is no quarterback controversy in Western New York, there hasn't been for years, and there won't be for the foreseeable future given the contract they just signed. Their entire organizational plan revolves around maximizing every single season Josh Allen has left in his prime, because they know exactly how rare and valuable a talent like his is. Dallas, on the other hand, has spent years in a strange middle ground, a talented quarterback, a talented supporting cast, but never quite the alignment of health, coaching, and defense needed to turn regular season success into a genuine championship run. Buffalo is chasing its franchise's very first Super Bowl appearance since 1993. Dallas is chasing its first appearance since the mid-1990s. Both fan bases have been waiting for what feels like an entire generation. And that brings us back to that quarterback mountaintop we talked about earlier, because both of these franchises are, in their own way, defined by where their quarterback sits in that conversation. Josh Allen sits, according to a growing number of respected voices around the league, at the very top, or awfully close to it. Dak Prescott sits somewhere just outside that group, productive, well-paid, but still fighting for the kind of universal respect that the aliens, Mahomeses, and Burrows of the world already have locked up. Let's talk a little more about what actually separates these tiers, because it's not as simple as just counting touchdown passes. When evaluators sit down to rank quarterbacks at the highest level, they're looking at things that don't always show up cleanly in a box score. How a player performs when a play breaks down and the pocket collapses around him. How consistently he protects the football in the most pressure-packed moments of a game. Whether he elevates the players around him or simply benefits from the talent that's already there. And, whether we like it or not, how much he has actually accomplished when the postseason lights get brightest. This is exactly why Josh Allen's story carries so much weight right now. He checks almost every single box except the biggest one. The talent has never been in question, not since college scouts first watched him sling a football through Wyoming's mountain winds. The production is undeniable. 5 straight seasons with more than 40 total touchdowns, a record no one else in the history of the league has ever matched. The improvement in decision-making has quieted the loudest critics who used to point at his interception totals as proof he'd never be truly elite. All that's left, the one thing that would settle every remaining argument, is a championship. And every single year that goes by without one, the pressure in Buffalo builds just a little bit more. Compare that to Patrick Mahomes, who has already answered that question 3 times over with 3 championship rings, but who now finds himself, for the first time in his career, having to answer a completely different question. Not, can he win it all, but, can his body hold up long enough to keep doing it? A torn ACL and LCL is not a small injury for anyone, let alone a quarterback whose game has always relied so heavily on improvisation, on escaping the pocket, on making something out of nothing with his legs when the play design breaks down. Kansas City has been here before in smaller ways, weathering injuries and rough patches only to come roaring back, and there is a very real chance Mahomes returns in 2026 looking every bit like the player who terrorized the league for years. But there is also a chance, quiet as it may be right now, that the wear and tear of playing at that intensity for nearly a decade is finally starting to show. And then there's Lamar Jackson, whose story might be the most fascinating of them all, because in almost any other era of NFL history, we would already be calling him one of the greatest quarterbacks who ever lived without any hesitation. 2 MVP awards. A career passer rating that ranks among the best the league has ever seen. More rushing production than any quarterback in league history not named Josh Allen. And yet, because he has never reached a Super Bowl, there is always an asterisk hanging over the conversation when his name comes up. It's not fair, not entirely, because postseason success in football depends on so much more than just the quarterback, on the health of your supporting cast, on the matchups you happen to draw, on a single bounce of the ball going one way instead of another. But fair or not, that's the world quarterbacks live in. Wins in January carry more weight than anything that happens between September and December. Joe Burrow's story is a little different again. When healthy, there might not be a more naturally gifted pocket passer in the entire league. Elite arm strength combined with a mind that reads defenses about as fast as anyone who has ever played. But when healthy has become the defining phrase of his career, injuries popping up at the worst possible times, derailing seasons that look destined for greatness. As he heads into 2026, fully healthy again, there's a sense around the league that this could finally be the year everything lines up for him. And Matthew Stafford, at 38 years old, might be the most quietly remarkable story of the entire group. A player who spent over a decade in Detroit putting up gaudy numbers on mostly forgettable teams, viewed for years as talented but somehow snake-bitten. Then he gets traded to Los Angeles, and almost immediately, everything changes. A championship. And now, deep into what should be the twilight of his career, his very first Most Valuable Player award, leading the entire league in passing grade last season. Father time comes for every athlete eventually, but Stafford is doing everything he can to make it wait just a little longer. So here we are, standing at the edge of the 2026 NFL season, looking up at that crowded mountain top. 5 elite quarterbacks, each with a different obstacle standing between them and the thing they want most. Josh Allen needs to finally break through in January. Patrick Mahomes needs his surgically repaired knee to hold up under the violence of an NFL season. Lamar Jackson needs the postseason breakthrough that has eluded him his entire career. Joe Burrow needs to simply stay on the field. And Matthew Stafford needs to prove that 38 is just a number, not an expiration date. Meanwhile, down in Dallas, Dak Prescott is trying to drag his franchise back into that top-tier conversation, carrying the weight of being one of the highest-paid players in the sport while his organization scrambles to fix a defense that fell apart completely last season. And meanwhile, right behind all of them, an entire generation of young quarterbacks, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Jackson Dart, and others, are sprinting up from below, hungry, talented, and absolutely unwilling to wait patiently for their turn. This is what makes the 2026 season one of the most fascinating in recent memory. It's not a story with one obvious hero standing alone at the top. It's a story with 5 or 6 of them, all circling each other, all separated by the thinnest of margins, all knowing that a single game, a single drive, a single throw in January could be the difference between finally being remembered as the best of their era, or spending another offseason answering the exact same painful questions all over again. So when the season finally kicks off, and the lights come on, and 60,000 people in Buffalo start screaming into the cold night air, remember what's actually at stake. It's not just wins and losses. It's not just stats and highlight reels. It's legacy. It's the difference between a career that gets remembered as one of the greatest of all time, and a career that gets remembered as one of the greatest to never quite finish the job. Josh Allen has the talent. He has the contract. He has the city fully behind him, painted chests and all, screaming his name into sub-zero temperatures every single Sunday. What he doesn't have, not yet, is the ring. Dak Prescott has the contract too, the production, the weapons around him, but he's still fighting to be mentioned in the same breath as the very best. Patrick Mahomes has the rings, 3 of them, more than anyone else currently playing, but now he's fighting his own body just to get back on the field at full strength. And an entire wave of young, hungry challengers is climbing up from below, ready to make all of these questions obsolete the moment they arrive. Let's slow down for a moment and really sit inside one of those Buffalo playoff losses, because you cannot understand what is driving Josh Allen this season without understanding what those losses actually felt like from the inside. Picture the fourth quarter of a championship game, the temperature somewhere in the 20s, breath visible in front of every player's face mask. The Bills are driving. The crowd is on its feet, 60,000 voices somehow finding one more gear of noise. And then, in an instant, it slips away. A stop on defense that never comes. A kick that sails just wide. A single possession in overtime that the other team gets and Buffalo never sees again. 4 times, in 4 different years, some version of that exact heartbreak has played out. Anywhere else, a fan base might start to lose faith. In Buffalo, something different happens. The pain gets absorbed and turned into fuel. Because the thing about Bills Mafia is that suffering together has become part of the identity, and every single one of those losses has only made the demand for a championship louder, not quieter. That is the environment Josh Allen walks into every single day. Not a fan base that is ready to give up on him, but a fan base that believes, with everything in them, that this is the era, this is the roster, this is the version of Allen that finally gets it done. And when you look at what Buffalo built around him this offseason, you can see the front office trying to answer that exact demand. A new head coach in Joe Brady, promoted specifically because of how well he understood how to maximize Allen's unique blend of arm talent and mobility. A defense retooled with younger, cheaper pieces after years of leaning on aging veterans. And a quarterback entering the season, according to some of the most respected football analysts in the country, as the single best player at his position in the entire league. Everything is lined up. The only thing left is January. Now think about the flip side of that story. Sitting in Frisco, Texas, inside the Dallas Cowboys' massive practice facility. There is a different kind of pressure there, less about a specific painful moment and more about the sheer weight of expectation that comes from being the most valuable franchise in the sport, wearing a star on the helmet that carries with it 3 decades of championship-starved history. Every single roster decision the Cowboys make gets dissected by national media in a way almost no other team in the league experiences. Every press conference from Jerry Jones becomes a headline. Every quiet free agency period, the kind that most teams could get away with, becomes a story about a big market franchise failing to spend its resources aggressively enough. And into that pressure cooker walks Christian Parker, the new defensive coordinator tasked with fixing a unit that finished dead last in the league in points allowed just 1 season ago. That is not a small task. That is not a tweak the scheme and hope for the best kind of job. That is a full rebuild, on a defense that has some talented individual pieces, players like Quinnen Williams up front, but that completely fell apart as a collective group last season. Parker's background on the other side of the rivalry, helping build a respected defensive staff in Philadelphia, gives Dallas a reason for optimism. But optimism and results are 2 very different things, and Cowboys fans have learned that lesson the hard way more times than they'd like to count. Meanwhile, on offense, all eyes stay on Dak Prescott, a player who somehow manages to be simultaneously one of the most productive quarterbacks in the league and one of the most argued about. Part of that comes from money. When a player signs a contract that briefly makes him the single highest paid quarterback in NFL history, expectations don't just rise, they explode. Every incompletion, every turnover, every disappointing loss gets measured against that number, against those tens of millions of dollars, in a way that quarterbacks on smaller contracts simply don't have to deal with. Prescott has produced solid, sometimes excellent statistical seasons throughout his career. But production alone has never been enough to satisfy the demands that come with wearing a Cowboys uniform. Nothing short of a genuine championship run will ever fully quiet the noise in Dallas, and both Prescott and the front office know it. There's a version of this season where both of these storylines collide in the most dramatic way possible. Buffalo finally breaking through to reach its first Super Bowl since 1993, Dallas finally climbing back to the top of the mountain for the first time since the mid-1990s, and the 2 of them somehow crossing paths on the biggest stage in sports. It's a long shot, the kind of storyline that exists more in the imagination of storytellers than in the cold, hard probabilities of a 17-game regular season. But that's exactly why we watch. Because every single year, at least one storyline that seemed impossible in July ends up being exactly what happens in February. And that brings us to the young quarterbacks again, because their rise matters just as much to this story as anything happening with the established stars. Drake May's ascension in New England has been stunning to watch. A player who looked promising but unfinished as a rookie suddenly looking like one of the smartest, most efficient decision-makers in the entire league in year 2. Jayden Daniels in Washington has completely transformed a franchise that had spent years searching for stability at the quarterback position, giving that fan base a genuine reason to believe in a bright future for the first time in a long time. Caleb Williams in Chicago still carries all of the raw talent that made him such a coveted prospect, and every extra rep, every extra season of experience, brings him closer to the ceiling everyone believes he can reach. And Jackson Dart, stepping into the spotlight in New York, represents a franchise willing to bet its future on a completely new era at the most important position in football. None of these young players are supplanting the established order yet, not in 2026, not with Allen, Mahomes, Jackson, Burrow, and Stafford all still playing at an elite level. But make no mistake, the runway is shortening. Every single season these young quarterbacks spend accumulating experience is a season closer to them knocking on the door of that top-tier conversation. The exact same conversation Josh Allen fought his way into years ago after scouts once doubted whether he'd ever refine his game enough to get there. Nobody knows yet how this season ends. Nobody knows which of these stories gets the fairy tale ending and which one gets another chapter of heartbreak added to it. That's exactly what makes it worth watching. Because somewhere between the frozen tundra of Buffalo and the glittering lights of Jerry World in Dallas, somewhere between a 38-year-old finally getting his flowers and a group of 20-somethings ready to take over the league, the next great chapter of NFL history is about to be written. And when the final whistle blows on this season, one thing is certain. Someone's story is finally going to change forever.